on.
That is. Yep.
I couldn't tell with the sun.
Now,
Yeah.
do we have,
One more.
okay. On,
That is.
okay. We
And I
have
did
Counselor Engelbretson, I am pretty sure she will be here.
trouble
Yeah.
accepting the invite. Didn't put the meeting on my calendar,
It's crazy. And
but I did. Oh, look, there's been some funny things.
Do you have some outlet problems Thursday, every other Thursday, right? Sometimes. But there was something that happened with. Remote management and somewhere in that truck.
Yeah, it didn't give me the three options to accept, tentative, or decline, so I actually replied to the email. And then I forgot City Hall was closed on Friday because I called and left the message just in case. I tried to give you advance notice and I just wanted to cover my backside.
Lobby may be closed, but there are still folks here. Oh. Like I just texted Counselor Lehman.
I am signed up for the class in October. Yeah, I've already.
On the 29th,
Yes,
the virtual class.
I've already done the public meetings portion, but I think the land use would probably be helpful.
Yep.
And it's not too dry yet. Oh, there's Kathy.
Yeah, I knew you were coming. I was just getting ready to text you though. Jim was downtown for a meeting and said it was pretty crazy. Traffic was bad, so.
Good traffic is always bad.
Well, yes.
For us, like River Road used to.
Yeah, it's getting busy. Very busy. All right, well, let's see here.
Way down, Kathy.
I know, mine was sitting here,
See.
had it so low. Yeah.
Oh,
It's
Oh.
wild today too.
Oh.
I attended court on the 16th. A lot of people. I try to go as often as I can, just to, if nothing else, observe and report.
Just
and
grab another
if
chair.
there's anything that I can take back to council that I think is important. I try to do. I know you don't have an official liaison, but I try to do it
I will
anyway.
Call us to order at 6:03. This is a work session, and so I'll remind everybody, no decisions tonight, but we're just gathering to listen to staff presentations and ask questions, but there are no decision making. In addition to the packet, I want to point out the mayor's community financial update meetings, which did not come out electronically to you. I will be having meetings in October and November that will be open to our community members, and I'll do those not in City Hall, but I'll do, come have a beverage with the mayor, bring your own beverage, but to talk about what's going on in the city and why there are financial issues, not only in Coburg, but across the state. So I'm in the interest of being absolutely transparent and never getting out in front of anyone. I wanted that on the table tonight. So thank you very much, Adam, for pulling that together for me. So we'll do roll call.
Myers? Here. Counselor Schmidt?
Here.
Counselor Ingebretson?
Here.
Counselor Bowman?
Present.
And absent is Counselor Wells and Counselor Lehman. And, oh, excuse me, Mayor Bell.
And I'm here. Thank you. So we have a quorum.
Yes.
Okay. All right, the work session information. First of all, Adam will be presenting the fiscal year 2025-26 council framework and action items in progress. And thank you very much for doing this.
You bet. Thank you. So I think I might have mentioned it at the last council meeting, but we're almost a quarter done with the fiscal year already. We put together the framework and we talk about it in February. We end up adopting that framework in March typically. And that framework, this last go round, we added prioritization and then we added kind of accomplishments of tasks accomplished in the prior year, and then a set of tasks that we're anticipating to move those objectives forward in the current fiscal year. So in July, we're closing the prior year, and then we're starting audit, and it gets to August, and all of a sudden it's September, and I thought, well, we better check those tasks and see how we're actually doing. And again, the framework document is really a multi-year document, so it's not a set of tasks to intended to check everything off that particular year. A lot of them are multi-year and roll through. But for context, in the packet, I put together just a one-page memo that has a little bit of just a very summary level about the conversation tonight and just about the framework in general. The next page is an actual just the tasks that are pulled from the full framework document. And I've color coded those. We'll go through that in a minute on the color coding. Behind that framework document is the council meeting look ahead. We talked about that a little bit at the last council meeting. I included it again because it really links very directly to the framework task, because that puts what we do, the tasks we do, ultimately, most of them end up culminating with council in decisions, like master plans that we bring forward end up coming to council. So these documents really work in tandem. And then behind that is the actual framework, 2026 framework document itself. So that's the full document that was approved, that we talked about in February and approved in March, that contains the 5 main categories, the 4 objectives within each category, and then actions that we have. So the page with the color coding just pulls those actions from the main document into its own separate tracking sheet. So that's the context there for the discussion tonight. And I thought it would be useful. I don't want to dominate and take too much time, but it's quite a load of work. And we talk about them a lot individually, but I thought maybe it'd be good to run through them real quick and just let everybody know where they stand, kind of how what we're doing well, what we're on track for, what we're maybe a little behind, and why. The goal is maybe 15 to 20 minutes, and then any other inquiries or questions along the way from council would be great. And then Megan is here for the second agenda item that we'll get into on some land use things. So the color coding, yellow is we haven't started. Or it's at its infancy. It hasn't, it's not in substantial work in progress, and definitely not completed. Orange is we are doing work on it, and we may be slightly trailing the timeline in some cases, but they're actively in there's work being done on them. And then green is that we've either completed them or they're well on track for completion within the time frame that was slotted. So kind of yellow, orange, and green is the way to kind of look at the grouping. And it'd be nice to have them full of greens, but that's pretty impossible for the load that we've put collectively on ourselves. So with that, I'll just, if it's all right, just rip through the topics and then, pop in any questions you have as we go. Again, some of these maybe, are pretty operational and in the weeds a little bit, but on the emergency management side, a couple of those, the highlights of that, Jim Bell, community member, who has stepped in before for the city in helping with emergency management, is doing that on a volunteer basis. I meet with him once a month. Really helpful just from coordination for knowing what's going on at the county and the state and making sure we're both having eyes and ears on a lot of emergency management stuff. The highlight here that isn't part of our task really, that many of you I think already know, is that Jim is helping coordinate a community emergency response team and having some meetings, and that's just underway with 2 or 3 meetings I think has happened. I think that's a real great thing to be somewhat outside the umbrella of the city. But I think it has a natural course to have some overlap between the city and a community group. So that's out there. Real quick on the yellows, those, the training and the notification system, that's something that's really dependent upon Lane County, and we haven't been able to coordinate that yet with them. I think that's still a valid and viable task, and it's in our meetings that we've had with them. It's just it's just going to take a while to get ourselves on their docket. The second one, that BRIC grant, BRIC is building resilient infrastructure for communities, building resilient. I can't remember the acronym. It's a FEMA grant, and no longer. It has been suspended. So that is yellow because there isn't anything to apply for right now. And who knows, how FEMA is undergoing tremendous change right now. Unknown what that'll look like later. We'll see. The gas and diesel fuel station at the operations facility, that actually connects to some ARPA funds that was already received by the city. So we have some requirements to actually complete enough of that work to submit that to verify that we've completed the ARPA funding, which is basically getting a conceptual design for what that would be. So we're shovel ready when we do find grant opportunities. We don't have any plans to put that in place with local utility dollars. It really would be a grant funded opportunity, but we'll get it to a spot where at least we're able to put in for grants on that. And Branch is working on that for us. Review of the EOP and the which is the emergency operations plan, and the COOP, which is the continuation of operations plan. Both of those documents, I'm hoping over the winter with Jim's assistance that we give those a review. I don't think there's any monumental changes that are needed, but I think it's just good to review it. What I found is contact lists and who's who always changes much more substantially than you ever think. So even just at that level, the COOP I'd like to dig into a little bit more than the EOP actually, but we'll see what we can from a time perspective. And then the tabletop, we're hoping that still, we've talked with Lane County and spring, probably mid to late spring is an opportunity for a tabletop with a hazmat is kind of one of the more common potential situations that we'd have with the truck stop and I-5 and all of that. So that's still on the docket. Maybe I'll just hit it each time. Anything on the emergency management before I move to the next?
Let me just say, I'm surprised there's as much green on here as there is. That really speaks to a lot of hard work.
Good. Yeah, it's there's a lot of balls to keep up in the air. That's really the goal. It isn't, we're trying to keep as many things across all of our different priorities going and just nudging forward. And some, you barely nudge them, then you come back in a few and it can nudge them forward. And a lot of them are really opportunistic with their other partners. But Community communication engagement is the second item, second category. The website, we've talked a lot about that. Sammy and team have done a great job. We've got the refresh, and we're continuing to add content there. So just keep looking at that for additional forms, documents, projects. And there's still a lot of room for growth, but the green is really launching that redesign and the new back end. The Coburg Creek Park, that one I think is hitting the mark. We've talked about it at Park and Tree Committee. Great initial discussion. I think that the survey, or at least the community engagement component, drafting that will be October. We'll talk about that with Park and Tree Committee and start to form that. And we'll leverage our expert here next to me probably for some of that engagement work as well over the winter. Advisory committee assessment, we really haven't done it. That was an idea to look at, how valuable are the various advisory committees, the cadence of how often they meet. Is it linking with council, priorities? And is it filling those functions? And I think they're working really well. I think we're kind of in an okay groove right now. So I don't know that one is a high priority from a staff side. I will note that the two of us handle all the 100% of the committees that we have out there, our standing committees and our ad hoc and subcommittees. It's basically Megan doing half and me doing half. So we've really consolidated that to this part of our admin team, which is a lot of work. There's a lot of routine, and it's a lot of hours. But I think it's been really worthwhile, and we'll hit on some of the planning commission work here in the next agenda item. Expansion of videos, we still have plans for that. We have thoughts, and I think I think there's some really good topics, and I think the mayor's upcoming financial conversations, maybe there's a little video opportunity there to promo that. I think that could be really good. So we've got some ideas more than my recaps. You got to get other faces in front than just my face out there. Some better faces.
Such a good job.
Some better faces, but we still get some decent hits and use of the videos. It the very first ones we got a lot more than we thought. It dipped a little, and then it's kind of rebounded, and it's been pretty flat, but at a higher number than I would have thought. So they're useful. Video is necessary. We need to do more video. And I think that's just a no-brainer, and we're going to keep trying. So community engagement. One last thing, Coburg Creek Park. I think we're, part of that conversation with Park and Tree is it's a small thing, but what we call it, I think, is going to matter. And I think it may not be necessarily appropriate to have it be called a subdivision name. It's part of our park system. So that'll be an early thing when we do our engagement efforts, is to make sure that we set the stage correctly, that it's a neighborhood park. It happens to be, we got the land by virtue of a subdivision approval, but it's not the subdivision. It's not an HOA park. It's a city park. So just a little tidbit for some of that survey work and engagement work. Code compliance. This one, we do some code compliance work with our current Harrisburg IGA. And the idea was, talking with them about, is there, as we dabble in that with them, and we do PD helps admin with some code enforcement work of our own here in Coburg, and that grow into something more formal and be a more shared situation as a dedicated code enforcement program. I've talked with the city manager in Harrisburg. We talk really about quarterly about different things, and I think there's interest. It's just a matter of having the timing and the funding and the priority match up. I think there's still some viability there, so that's at least on simmer. On the burner. And then that second one goes with that. That's a potential where we coordinate our compliance program is our police technician, and Erica has been in that spot now for I think about 6 months, and getting the most critical stuff done first, which was the property evidence and all those kind of things. And I think we'll be building some opportunities there. And that goes with the third, that document library. We've started that. I put it as yellow. We haven't really dove all the way in on that, but I think that's a natural to go with it. We are, we have that code, citizen inquiry table in the city administration report every month. So you see the new stuff that comes in. We leave on there the month that they get resolved, and then it goes away for that second month. So it's not a forever list, but it comes in bursts, and it comes in, some topics you'd expect and some topics you wouldn't. There's some random things. Code enforcement I did it, as a full-time gig in a city long ago, and it's a very interesting component of city. It's an important component of all city stuff, but you get involved in a lot of things that you wouldn't expect. Abandoned vehicles are one that we've really kind of hit proactively, and I think PD with them have done a great job of getting some of that obvious abandoned vehicle stuff squared away. Economic support, economic development, and that's another one where Megan teams up. We team up together on a lot of economic development stuff. IOF, there's a whole host of kind of IOF facility kind of questions and issues, I think, in the next year and a half-ish, as we finish the 5-year lease, that I think are going to be important discussions. And the tiptoeing into that is really just being prepared for a variety of different grants. There's grants are going away in large part across the board, but one that usually is pretty strong that stays is historic preservation. And that's a great opportunity, whether it's us or Main Street being the lead and us supporting them. So we actually have a meeting with Megan Dompe tomorrow, which is a couple different topics, but one of them is some grant opportunities to kick around together. Business surveys, we just haven't done those yet. I think that's another Main Street combination, at least for the retail downtown one. The light industrial, I have some ideas there. I've been a part of that on kind of traded sector, which is more of the light industrial. I have some history with those kind of surveys, business retention expansion surveys, BRNEs. That was my goal with this task. We'll see if we get there to do a full BRNE for our industrial partners. So nothing started, but I think it's still valid and viable to have on the list. And then the infrastructure planning, the one that's in green, that's pretty much a constant. And we'll keep really close with Raven Ventures. That's the LLC that is the owners of the annex property. I talk with them at least once a month. They've just submitted permits to extend the sewer line and a temporary driveway access that's county right of way. But Megan and I, and then Brian for public improvements, Brian comes in, and we have the three of us have meetings that help facilitate that and kind of plan for what might be coming. Most of it is still speculative based on who's going to eventually land there. But I feel really solid that we're doing that for that property and for North Industrial in general, North and South Industrial. Parks and open space. The idea was to have a retreat in the summer. We didn't hit that. I think we'll still be looking to have a different kind of a meeting with the committee. There's always full agendas. We've had some really good topics and good recommendations coming out of there. And there's a bunch more on the docket for Park and Tree. But the idea was really to be able to do a little bit of a master plan review. And I think that's essential when we're talking about adding that park, the future park to the system. I think that'll be great to go through and do just a review, not necessarily an update or changing content, just a review of the master plan and see where the new parkland fits and all of that. The other ones we've already hit that on the communications and engagement. Park and Tree will definitely be a part of that. The vegetation management and maintenance plan, that was a great document that DeBeat through his work helped build. We're probably at a 70% document, I would say. That's something that Megan and Brian and I are wanting to get to more of a 90% document, get that to Park and Tree, and then get that to council sometime this winter, because it'll really help us with our budget planning and how we do our operations and maintenance throughout our park system and our rights of way and our storm drains. But parks is kind of the priority there, but it's really for all of it. long range planning, Megan gets all the greens. So, you know.
Up, Megan.
As you all know, you approved our application or our go ahead to apply for a buildable lands inventory grant. That goes along with some housing work. We're supposed to we thought we were going to find out late September, but now it's early October, I think was yeah. We're still feeling strong about that. Cresswell ultimately, they withdrew, so it is not a 3-city application. It's only a 2-city. It's us and Cottage Grove. Their council did not decide to move forward as part of the partnership there. Not sure whether that helps, hinders, or don't know. Not in our
Well, they
control,
have
so we'll
that
see what happens.
building Moratorium on the west side of town.
Yeah,
So
there was
maybe.
some interesting. We got a recap. We didn't. I didn't watch the meeting, but got a recap about it. So we'll go at it and see. We'll let you know as soon as we know on that. The CFEC stuff, number 20, the climate friendly and equitable communities stuff. We're having that on the agenda here in a minute, and that's already been through the Planning Commission. We'll give you a really quick overview, just a heads up that it's coming your way. Another big load of work that Megan has spearheaded for us. Great stuff. The other one was pursue. I'm not sure if this is disingenuous, but pursue funding opportunities for the TSP. I put it as green because we delayed it, and we delayed it partly because of workload for other things that are in our land use planning, but it was also budgetary, and it was regional prioritization of some of the grant opportunities. So we are still monitoring that. We're still looking at it. We did do the TSP assessment, which was a great effort that Megan was involved with. So we have that assessment document, and it still needs to be on the docket between now and 2029. We're going to need to just find its right place in the next 2 or 3 year work plan cycle. But it's a large, we think, $400,000 project, which we would be in for some portion of it. I think we'd be hard pressed to try and pull that off without some sort of grant funding. So we will be glued to the typical grant opportunities for that one. And then the fourth one was resolved at the last council meeting with the decision to withdraw that or delay, return those allocation of funds on that connector feasibility study and revisit that maybe closer to the time we're doing UGB work. The tree stuff, we have a framework for some potential grant. We just need to find a grant that makes that stuff eligible. That's an eligible part of a grant. That's really the reason that action is there, that task. It's to be grant ready. In the meantime, we're operationally working through our management. Almost complete with contracts with city arborists to just have that a little more locked in for reimbursement and for our liability. Just rather than working a little more ad hoc, we're going to have that be an actual ongoing contract with just more standard. And the storm emergency that really relates to the FEMA stuff. That's our side of ensuring that what we're doing when we have tree and vegetation related stuff stays eligible. That's been integrated into our public works operations procedures documents. Vegetation management, that I've already talked about that one. So this kind of doubles up because it lives also in that parks and open space. We do have it planned for fall, winter to park and tree, and then winter for council, and then try to implement that in the 26 growing season. So we're a little behind, but still moving it forward. Flip side, page 2, technology assessment. We are getting our SCADA. We are slowly moving forward on the SCADA controls. That's primarily done with well number 3 that's under construction now. That has a lot of water SCADA associated with it. And that will help then drive SCADA, similar SCADA equipment for wells 1 and 2. after that. But we'll get all of that SCADA there and then tie everything together. So that is moving slowly forward. Slowly is good because that stuff's expensive. So we'll just incrementally get there. Network desktop replacements, we have a new hardware standardization all set. That's been done with coordination with LCOG, and we have Public Works completed on that. The equipment hasn't arrived, but we've made that order to get Public Works all squared away on their replacement schedule. Municipal Court and admins next, and then PD after that. Multi-year, again, that's they're not as expensive maybe as it used to be, but they still are hefty. But we are consolidating what kind of equipment and just the software packages, everything that goes with it to standardize as much as we can for ease of use and for ease of support. The expanded security and monitoring system, we got a bid back for the parks, and I gave an update. It was outrageously expensive. We're basically a little bit back to the drawing board. We're going to do a little more of a one-off solution for the restrooms, and then really trying to assemble a shovel-ready project to look for grants for a more system-wide security solution. It just gets really expensive really quick. So that one is, I'd love it to be green, but it is, and it needs to be. We need to make progress, but we'll just keep inching that forward. Codification, that one's just staying yellow. We did not fund it, and that's a large project, workload and cost. And so by budget time, April, May, we will have a project cost identified for what it takes to actually codify our ordinances. I think it's a really important project for evolving just how we function and how the community has access to the rules and regulations in our town. It's hard to function without things being codified. It's a big one. When I first got here, I thought, oh yeah, we'll have this done in year and a half. And I mean, yeah, that's a high priority, and it is. It's a hard one to get done with, and it's a lot of load on Sammy, but it also takes legal involvement because there's inevitable duplication and conflicting definitions. And when you start pulling it all together, that's when you see these things that like, which one takes precedence here? And then there'll be a lot of work for council. There'll be some huge strikeout, very mundane, very very detailed stuff that we'll have to bring to council to amend because there's an inevitable duplication and cross conflicts between different ordinances. But it's a great project, but stuck in yellow for now. HR, we have in December the next iteration of the employee policy manual. That there's always changes to state law that drive some of those. The Oregon paid leave requires some updates. I think last year there was some whistleblower stuff, and then there's some local stuff, but our own local stuff is very minor. So just some good solid updates coming in a annual update in December. And CIS did help us with that. They do great work. Job descriptions, I thought we were way behind, and then I did some math on the ones that we have completed. We're 5 out of 15, so we're at 33%. Our goal was 50. We're doing them as we have openings, and unfortunately, we've had a variety of vacancies, so we've been updating those as we go. So we're not too far behind on that. And our wellness stuff that is really hard to fit in, and but Megan, again, she's taken the lead on that and actually attended a CIS. Was it CIS that led that? Yeah. Which was great. And Larry also does some PD specific stuff, and we're still trying to figure out how we start putting some foundational blocks together as a citywide program rather than kind of more in the bits and pieces realm. So we're inching that forward. Next one is strategic planning. And this one I have big question marks on. This one I kind of drove a lot of this, and this will be kind of for retreat time. The idea was maybe to use the retreat to do a full strategic planning. I'm not so sure we're ready and or necessarily need it right now. I'm not, that'll be a good conversation, and maybe the time for that conversation will be the retreat. The framework hopefully, helps fill some of that gap that I think it was there. I think it's smart for us to do at some point. I just am not totally sure and would love input when we get to it. about what council thinks, because it needs to really be equally council valued as well. And I think the framework and the tasks and the prioritization that we've done, we've evolved this kind of framework thing each iteration, and it may be sufficient for now. I don't know, but that's in yellow because I'm not sure it's an effort to kick off and do. So we just need to all be ready to hit the go button. And I think we can at least talk about that at retreat.
If I can stop you for just a second, going back to HR related topics.
Yeah.
I was just curious. I saw the application go out for, I think you decided an accounting technician
Yes.
position.
Mhm.
Any interest in that?
Yeah, we were hitting that from kind of two different angles. One is our open job announcement closes on Thursday, so day after tomorrow. So we'll find out what our total applicant is. A lot of times they come in at the end. We've had some in already, and then we're also using a placement service to evaluate candidates that aren't always in the kind of the open job market. And the mayor is helping me with that, and we've been evaluating some candidates with that. So we'll end up with kind of these two different streams of potential candidates, and yeah, I think we'll have some viable. We definitely have some viable candidates to review.
Do you think we'll have anybody perhaps by the first quarter of next year? Or is it too early to say?
A little early to say. I think kind of the optimistic timeline would be, end of October, having somebody on board. That's possible. That'd be a little over a month from now. Before Thanksgiving would be probably a pretty darn realistic one. It always depends on people's current situations about how quickly they may be able to pivot, as well as our final decision making. So, yeah. Before the start of 26, if we don't have someone by the start of 26, we'll have to have some different conversations. Yeah, it's not a super sustainable model as is.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, feeling good.
That's good.
Yep. Jumping forward, CIP, capital improvements plan. Those two will both be addressed in January and February. That's what's on the docket for that, on the look ahead for a discussion in a work session about the CIP, and then adoption of the CIP in February in advance of the budget. We'll be expanding that template and format out, and we'll really be breaking down, as we've talked about before, engineering design versus construction. So we have kind of the understanding of the different buckets and timelines between fiscal years, a little bit more granular. Wastewater facilities plan. We have the capacity analysis complete. We just got a final document on that, and that's scheduled for the November council meeting. So you'll hear an update on our wastewater capacity from Kennedy Jenks, a consultant that did that work. That took a while. It's a relatively short document for how much work and calculation and effort goes into it, but it's really good content and conclusions, I think, for staff and for council. So excited to show you that in November. Stormwater master plan. Likewise, we have about what we think is a 90% document right now. It'll come to council at the work session in October, so a little over a month from now. The other items, any fees or SDCs that come along, I think are probably that might have been spring of 26 is probably a little early. Those are probably summer, fall discussions about what that looks like, what we need, the timing of it, how to put all that together. But we'll get the master plan done and adopted in front of you and adopted first. And then our operational stuff will go along with the master plan. Those two are pretty well linked. Moving on to streets. We think we're going to be able to do that IGA. We had some good conversations this last winter about it. Just missed the window of kind of fitting it together, which is actually okay from a budgetary standpoint. We didn't probably have the funds to devote to that type of maintenance I think we will next summer. So that's we're really optimistic that that IGA would get to work and we would have a really cost-effective means. I think we've talked about it. It didn't work out. We only had one bidder, and it was twice what the prior year was. So you get half the lane miles done, or you pay twice as much, one or the other. So it's challenging, but it's an important part of our capital maintenance program. And then with the CIP, we'll be talking more about the pavement management system in the grading and scoring as we do our major maintenance work next summer. Financial system training utilization, the quarterly reporting, that has had bits and starts and stops. And of course, it's been slowed to almost a halt by our vacancy now. I have some hopes of getting that together and hopefully seeing that in the report on the second quarter. We're going to probably miss a quarterly report. Trying to, obviously we have our monthly financial reports and we can every quarter dive into those a little deeper, but having an actual ongoing quarterly report document that shows kind of consistent quarter by quarter trend lines and those kind of things, that's yet to make it to the table for everybody. It's a disappointing yellow for me. That one's frustrating. I want that one moved to green. Continued training expansion of our financial software. I think that's going well. We've incorporated the timesheet module that Springbrook uses, so we're actually truly integrated now data-wise on the timesheet piece, and we're going to be doing some training for all department heads on how to deal with accounts payable, how to use that system to kind of self-help vendor information, and then going into budget their monthly reports for their whatever budgets they're responsible for. They'll be able to look those up and get them themselves. So I think that one's going along well. Debt service review, the formal review of a debt service. My note on this one is, as you recall, we added some funding appropriation in the URA budget for a consultant to kind of look at what does it look like as we taper towards closing out URA. I'm sort of wondering if the timing for the debt service review would either be in conjunction or immediately following that, because I think that would give us a lot better information about what both the general fund will be looking like when the URA closes, as on the positive side, and then what the sewer fund will look like on the negative side when the URA closes. And of course, the URA existed to fund 40% of the debt service for the wastewater debt. So they're very linked. And I'm wondering if that's probably the best timing. So that's probably a next fiscal year, which is kind of my penciling in, is that we're, and then that works also with our debt for this building, the combined composite debt. So my take right now would be to defer that to next fiscal. I think it'll just give us better information. And it's not urgent. And of course, the economic climate isn't ripe for refinancing quite yet. So, but it may be changing. We'll see. Financial policies and procedures. That's actually that number 47, the ending fund balance targets for funds. That is on the agenda for tomorrow night with the Finance Audit Committee. So they're going to be digging into that starting tomorrow. So we're making progress there, a little delayed, but we're making progress. Cost allocation policy, that one is, that will be prior to this next FY27 budget. So we go into the budget with that well understood and any tweaks that we're making approved by council. So that'll be over the winter. And then the final one, are both in green. Again, that's the subcommittee who 100% of the subcommittee are here tonight. The council subcommittee doing great work. And that one is after the August hiatus, that group is meeting October 7th and sent out a tentative agenda on that today. And we'll get a formal agenda out. But I think that work, we're entering that phase 3 of what was the original charge when that subcommittee was created. The final phase of the work, the first phase was utility rates. Second phase was some of the general fund work that resulted in the park and open space fee. And then the third phase is public safety, diesel tax, the longer range revenue opportunities, and then giving feedback then to council. And I think the council review of that, I think we have tagged for December. At the very latest, that'll be January, depending upon how many times the subcommittee can meet before we have our December meeting. So it could move down into January, but that's all the kind of the high level tasks that go with the framework. And of course, that's not our day-to-day, week-to-week operational jobs. They intermingle, but hopefully that gives a sense of where things are. And we'll be going over this again tomorrow as a department head team, and just make sure we're, like I said, moving the ball forward. Some of them have unexpected opportunities that show up and we jump on them, and some just have to sometimes take a back seat, either money or time. But we want to make sure that you're all, closely connected and plugged into that. So when we talk at retreat, especially, that we really are able to jump into that and talk about prioritization, talk about why things are lagging, if something's okay to lag versus, hey, reprioritize that. Don't let that one lag. Get it up on the top. We are, went from 17 and a half or so FTE to 15. So it's, it's a challenge and a vacancy. So we're at 14, with some, parental leaves, sprinkled in there. So it's been a challenge getting this summer, done. So I'm really looking forward to October. Hunting season's over. Some of the parental leave stuff is done. The baby season's over. Yeah. We'll get ourselves back to full strength, but everybody's done an amazing job in all of their areas to keep everything afloat and the ball moving forward. So this list is really, it touches everybody on the team, and of course touches you all as well. So that's the update. Any glaring issues from your side that we need to be grabbing that we're not?
No, we have wanted to sort of have a Gantt chart, if you will, or a progress report. So I think this really hits the mark on that and gives us some time to think about, well, is that okay that that's yellow, or do we need to put more resources towards that? But I think you've done a great job in describing why some things can wait and why others maybe need to be pushed forward. So.
Good. Yeah, I tried to make a Gantt chart, but it's so kind of unknown on the timeline part is that I thought it got less productive, and I scrapped it and went with this thing instead. Gantt light. Yeah.
It works.
Yeah. Good. Okay.
I have a small question about the restroom security issue.
Yeah.
Is that still, well, I'm hearing from people in the community that they're noticing it's an issue. Is it high on the city radar, or is it one of those things that occasionally pops up?
It's high on the radar. The problem was we were looking for what turned out to be a little bit too much of a Cadillac solution. We're going to have to give it maybe not a Geo Metro, but a little bit better than, we have to give it a more practical solution, and it'll still be scheduled locking, but it'll be much more affordable and not linked in with the rest of our systems. But I expect in the next, 4 to 6 weeks to have that in there. And Park and Tree has already approved or recommended operationally kind of the seasonal times that it's open, locked and unlocked, that matches kind of daylight savings and all of that, summer, winter. So I think we're prepared. We just were hoping for a more integrated solution that just was way out of our range, but we'll get it in there.
So not quite a Cadillac, not quite a MacGyver solution.
Yeah,
Maybe
something.
a Toyota.
Yeah, something.
Maybe the mayor going up and locking it.
We'll do a sign up sheet.
Figure it out.
We'll do a sign up sheet.
Any idea what type of people are committing the vandalism? Is it kiddos? Is it people out of town? Is it people
Yes, it's different times of the day, different things. Vandalism, there's the gross factor that doesn't break anything but costs us cleanup time, which is money. And then there's the breaking things. We think that locking them will reduce some of the breaking things part. That seems to happen more in the late night. The messes, we might reduce them a little bit with this, though that won't go away. Those happen at random times. I can't quite figure that out altogether, but
Well, people can be gross.
yep.
So I'm not surprised.
Yeah, that's just the reality of public infrastructure. Publicly available public infrastructure. That people are in the best of times hard on equipment and hard on facilities and infrastructure, and then they can be worse than hard on them. They can be gross, and then they can damage it. There was a little run of juvenile activity. Our PD did a great job of tracking that stuff down and addressing it with some diversion type solutions and awareness of the parents and guardian. That helps a lot. So, I think there's a lot of different tools to try and mitigate it, but it'll never get zero. But it's manageable.
Well, if all else fails, we can get Councilor Myers to go stand watch.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Volunteer, Trace got timer.
That's a good option. Yeah.
Tether my dog out there.
No, we want to protect that investment, and of course the one restroom is brand new, but it also a plug for that, a little bit extra expense on that particular bathroom, designed in a way that really can just hose it out. That is one of the benefits of that style of construction, the precast, pre-done thing. It's industrial strength, and it's able to be cleaned relatively easy. It's still not a fun task.
No.
But future, if ever, the bathrooms at Norman need a significant, if they fail, or if they go, a building similar to what was put in Pavilion is a great maintenance building. It's a smart long-term investment, that style.
Some cities are using, and I think I mentioned this at council meeting, stainless steel external stalls. Go in, people can still see your feet and what you're, but they're easy to clean, and there's a lot less vandalism because people know you're in there.
Yep. Yeah, there's there's been so many experimenting types, and they all have positives. They all have, downfalls, and what people do in them. Yeah, it's wild.
Everybody is struggling with
It's wild.
the
Yep,
same
it's a common
thing.
And it really isn't new. The cost, the ramping up of what it takes to deal with the damage, obviously escalates along with the economy, but it's been a forever issue in every community I've been in. So it's one of the downfalls of having a nice, open, available system. And you don't want to restrict it so far that you have an asset that isn't usable. But yay, no vandalism, but nobody can use it either. You don't want that. So
Like locking the library all the time.
yeah, it's the balance.
Paris, you don't have the right coins, you don't get to.
That's exactly,
Uh-huh.
that's in many European countries.
Go to a restaurant really quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a whole different system and structure because of the problems. So yeah. So the other agenda item, I talked a ton on this one, but it is really kind of following the mantra and commitment we have of just bringing something forward to you just for orientation, just so you know what's coming. Really isn't a big need to jump into it. I'll hit the super duper high notes, which is, and I think I mentioned it, which is it's a load of work. This is a state generated code requirements or legislative requirements. And I don't know how many months Megan's been working on it. It's been a big and somewhat detailed and challenging project. And I think we have a really great product. And Megan can kind of go through why it's in front of us and the work she's done to date, including planning commission and how it's going to show up in front of you here in the next 2 months.
I think those of us on transportation committees have been hearing a lot about CFIC for
Yeah.
quite a long time. Yeah, but it's not.
I was gonna say, some of this may ring a bell for some of you because it has been in discussion for quite a while, both locally and on the state level. So the climate friendly equitable community rulemaking was done in 2022 in response to an order from Governor Kotek to reduce climate pollution, specifically greenhouse gas emissions, and also to improve equity or increased housing and transportation options within our communities. The reason Coburg is subject to this specific rulemaking is our inclusion in the Central Lane Metropolitan Planning Organization. And so these requirements are specific for metro areas, not all jurisdictions throughout the state. So the code amendments, this is, as Adam said, just kind of a brief preview for you tonight. This is a change to the zoning code ordinance, which means it is a type 4 land use procedure. So first it went to Planning Commission for a recommendation to council. So this will come before you 2 more times at a minimum, of first reading with a public hearing, as well as a second reading of the ordinance. Just last week, Planning Commission met and made that recommendation. But Planning Commission has been hearing about this for quite a while as well. So DLCD, there are kind of 2 components of proposed changes that we are looking at. The first set are centered around parking reform, which is largely eliminating parking minimums throughout the city and establishing maximums in the downtown area. DLCD provided a lot of technical support for Coburg on that code language. So once you have time to go through the matrix of proposed amendments, you'll see that a lot of the calculations and requirements for parking are just being removed. The second component are walkable design standards. She'll also maybe hear talked about sometimes as 0330. That's the last 4 numbers in that specific OAR that we are seeking compliance with. So DLCD contracted with LCOG to perform a code audit of Coburg's current zoning code and existing land use regulations against the model code that was developed specifically for cities to achieve compliance with the 0330 design standard rule. And what that consultant found was that a lot of what Coburg is already doing is very much in line with the intent of the state's rulemaking. And so both in the parking reform and the walkable design standards, Coburg already did not have parking minimums with a few exceptions for the downtown area before these changes took place. So this is really just in the same vein of moving forward the intention and the vision.
Is there a paper I'm supposed to be looking at?
There is a memo.
Thank you.
So yes,
Next question about parking minimums. Are you talking time limits or the number of parking spaces?
the number of parking spaces required
Move it in.
for each development.
I'll do that. with
Yeah.
you.
This is,
So traditionally in the past, they can be associated with a type of use or square footage. And what what the parking reform is trying to achieve, as I mentioned, it's geared more for metropolitan areas. So you think about places like Winco or Valley River Center, where there is just a massive amount of unused land space. So getting more, and then a lot of the design standards speak to the form-based code that was put into place for the Central Business District a couple years ago, really bringing buildings closer up to the public right of way, the public realm, to increase pedestrian friendly activity, and create more compact development, which also is in line with Coburg's vision for not needing to expand too far. You going for that? Yeah, so there are a few other changes that are proposed, but they are very minor housekeeping items, just some cleaning up of naming and spelling and grammatical changes like that. But all of the changes are listed in the matrix that was provided to you just before tonight's meeting. So you will definitely have some time to look those over, and please feel free to reach out to myself or Adam if you have any questions, comments, just want to know a little bit more about maybe where something came from or anything of that sort.
I have one add, I think, just to reemphasize what Megan said is, many communities, I think, had to wrestle more with this than Coburg because they were very different than what their code is. I think one of the benefits here is it really is in line, as Megan said, it's in line with what the prior form-based code is, what the downtown is. It fits pretty well. So it wasn't a big endeavor to kind of, round peg, square hole thing. It actually aligned fairly well in the big picture. There's just a lot of details to make sure you meet those, what is it, 033, those kind of OARs. When you get down to those are what, 7 or 9 digits long? I can't remember what OARs are, but they're the number of digits. But so a lot of technical work, but from the high level, it actually is pretty compatible with what we're looking for and what we're wanting our downtown and our community in general to be with the infill, even in the residential side. So in mixed use development, all of that stuff, design standards already pretty compatible. So while it's not perfectly seamless, I think it made sense. And I think the recommendation from the Planning Commission, felt the same way, that it was generally aligned with what, it wasn't a big departure from what we're used to doing.
Would you anticipate changes in the parking facilities particularly on North Industrial? Based on, I
hadn't thought too much about North Industrial. This could open up the potential for off-street parking that was required for the development previously. It could open up some redevelopment potential for that. But I think it's also, if the parking is needed, I don't think that developers or property owners will want to eliminate parking that is in high use currently. So I know some of those locations out there used to have a far greater number of employees. I'm not sure if they might feel that perhaps there's a better use for that land now, perhaps not.
I think it might facilitate some of those abilities where that may not have been, as easily attainable before, but it still has, a lot of this still has some market decisions. But I think it gives, more opportunities to, for North Industrial, probably maybe incrementally less so than in the downtown area, but still does exist where they could, if their business model maybe supports that, of saying, hey, there's a better thing to use this for than this amount of parking that we anticipated, 20 years ago.
more food trucks out there.
Yeah, maybe so.
Sorry, Councilor Wells isn't here, so.
It also adds some standards for parking lot design, which you'll see
Right.
the specifics in here, but it talks a little bit about providing conduit for EV charging, having pedestrian markings that are specifically marked. So it's not like when you go to Costco and you're not quite sure how to get into the front door. So there are things even in the parking that speak very much to the pedestrian experience and circulation.
Anything
Common in Coburg's code already.
anything having to do with accessibility?
There are some, nothing monumental, but just mentioning things that, any walkways need to be connected to the accessible parking stalls. There's also a new definition for the word accessible itself.
What a good idea.
Yes, which is a reference to some ORSs that you may be familiar with. But there is some mention, like I said, nothing to stand alone, but definitely quite a few mentions, and that is a big part of the intention for the code as well.
So first, it's scheduled for the October meeting for first reading. And, you know, again, if there are any particular things that you either for yourself or for the council, or, you know, just to have on record for the community to make sure they understand, let us know and we can make sure we highlight that in our formal presentation with the ordinance. This was just more of an informal, you know, make sure you guys know that it's happening and where it is in the process. And also, I think, you know, from our staff opinion, not a huge policy wrestling match, you know, necessarily. But if there is anything in there that you think might be of interest / concern to either the body, as a council, or to the community, let us know what you think those might be, so we can make sure we hit it in a presentation, so we don't have that linger and not be addressed.
Not having read all the revisions, are there any that directly impact our current businesses that they would need to be aware of? Are there any changes or anything that impacts them in a negative way? As far as parking, I'm thinking of like the greenhouses, if they're going to expand, or, you know, just our businesses.
None of the businesses downtown will have to take action to comply
Okay.
with the new rules. And I would say, if anything, it offers them a little bit greater flexibility, because parking that they were required to have previously, they may not, as we mentioned, they may find a better or different use for some of that parking. I don't know. It's hard to try to guess what would happen, but
You know, as with most land use things, it's not, you can't really apply land use retroactively. It's for new applications or new things that come through. I think one of the things that it does, this parking maximum, is actually a public, you know, a public protection against, it's probably unlikely in our environment, but as you described, you know, the potential of somebody coming in saying, we think we need oodles of parking for whatever their market business is and whatever they think they need to turn a profit in their business. This establishes something to say, well, you can up to this level. You flat out can't. You know, you can try to apply for a variance. It'd be a pretty hard thing to actually get a variance to exceed a parking maximum. So it puts a tool in place that I think prevents some of those really bad uses of land, especially in the higher density areas of downtown and mixed use areas. So it's unlikely that somebody in this day and age would utilize spendy land just for that, but it used to be more of an issue when land was not quite as expensive. But that is a new protection that actually is not necessarily a benefit or a detriment to current businesses. It's a benefit, we think, to the community and to set a cap. It'd be interesting. We debated whether or not we ever see anybody push up against that cap. It's maybe unlikely, but this establishes that maximum, which I think is it's a smart thing to have when you're wanting infill and you're wanting that pedestrian density and that experience in a downtown and that energy and vibrancy. There's nothing that kind of kills a good time as big swaths of parking in downtowns. It does shift potentially if everybody decides to not have very much parking. The long-term implications, and I had this kind of conversation with the council at a prior location, is it does slowly shift the burden of parking to being a public issue. So parking management and parking supply and inventory becomes more of a city involved function than it does fully loading it on private development, because we're really saying you don't have to provide very much. In some cases, none. So it's I guess the companion piece to that statement is places that have a parking problem are thriving, right? It's good to have a parking problem. I would say that's whenever a community is wrestling with a parking problem, that's That's a good thing. If you have a lot of parking supply and you have no activity, economic activity, that's a different kind of problem.
But I do wonder, you know, this would be a community issue as we look at shrinking required parking spaces, whether that will push parking into our neighborhoods. I mean, think about the antique and vintage fair. And that's one day of the year. And yes, that is an anomaly. But if we shrink the requirements, and we have to, I mean, now I'm not saying we shouldn't, we have to. But that may actually push some parking into our neighborhoods.
Yeah, I would imagine there are peak times where that's very possible and maybe even likely. You know, the devil's advocate to that would be that's exactly what we build a lot of asphalt and paving for. It's not just to drive on those roads, it's actually for parking as well. But you're right, it's especially when it's not commonly current practice occurring out into residential.
Also impacts the walkability in our
Yes.
neighborhoods because we do not have sidewalks.
That's a unique piece. You're right. That's one that does make that a little bit different here with a less than formal pedestrian infrastructure system. Yeah, I agree. So that's a balancing point. And I guess some of that is, you know, as you talk about downtown versus some of the other commercial areas where it's really unlikely, you know, can a business be viable without their own parking? In a downtown, often yes. As you get further away from downtown, even in a smaller community, you know, you have to balance that, you know, is that a risk? You know, how much of a risk that is that they would build out their lot coverage with a building without parking. You know, it is down to the market. You know, the historical land use thing was we're going to demand it and make sure that it doesn't do what the maybe is. And this is explicitly to kind of roll back that thinking and saying, hey, you're mandating something that, you know, we leave it more to the market to determine whether they need that much or not. Don't mandate to have them have more than what they want to put in. And but that is the inherent trade-off. Absolutely.
I think that's what Counselor Smith was alluding to when you asked about like the greenhouse.
But having brought up, you know, the antique fair, and I'm finding that it feels to me like we are beginning to have a more aggressive issue with right of way, because now people are putting boulders in their right of way, so you can't get off the street. They're claiming that property. So maybe before all of this goes into effect and we have a problem, we need to educate citizens as to how that right of way is used and what they are and are not allowed to do, just throughout the whole city, just one big, here's an informational piece. We're going to start enforcing this because, and it isn't just during Antique Fair, but when I walk around now, people are claiming their property right up to the street. And I think that if we do this with parking, that we might be wise to address that before it becomes more of a personal issue on a one-by-one basis. Maybe just citywide, this is right-of-way use. This is what you are allowed and not allowed to do.
We have hit on that previously. We came up against that when they were putting in the fiber optic cable. And we had lots of discussions and was in the mayor's notes and things like that. You may think your property line goes all the way to the asphalt, but it does not. So I think we may come down to a one-on-one conversation, and that becomes a code compliance issue.
Yeah,
Education in general before we do the one-on-one. I don't know that a lot of people really know. They plant.
I think
way out.
there has been a lot of general education.
Okay.
I think it's, and we've let it go until we need that area. So
It,
disagree.
it's a bit of a, yeah, it's a dicey one, and Megan could probably recount every week having people come in for a building permit or asking questions and being wrong about where their property line is. But we also benefit greatly from people taking on some of that. They maintain it. There's a lot of really nice landscaping that is in the right of way that we are okay with. So we have to really kind of look at it holistically and balance it out to say, if you can't, what you can and can't do in a right of way, generally, I think things are working pretty well. I definitely see what you're talking about. They show up. Yeah, they show up, and there are ways to address it. And then there are existing codes that can address it, as is. I guess to this, my take would be that this is a really slow thing. It's a good awareness thing that there may be a time in 3, 5, 10 years where a parking creep, shows up. And I think it's worth kind of keeping tabs, at least anecdotally to start, and then maybe a little more formally to look at about how things impact. And then it's a decision of is that acceptable or not, that some level of spill, occurs into some residential areas. And when you have residential really, really close to the downtown, that's a challenge. Lots of issues, lots of unique pros and cons with the type of right-of-way improvements that have just evolved and happened in Coburg. It has both sides of it. It allows for a lot of parking because it's undefined, right? You can fit a lot in, you can do a lot of kind of funky stuff. So when you have peak demand, it works, but you also, you're really close to downtown, and it doesn't take too long for something to go that isn't a problem that goes, now it's a problem. And is it a problem as defined by, several neighbors, or is it a problem that is agreed upon as a problem by council in totality with all of the other trade-offs that happen? Economic vibrancy, jobs, property tax revenue, all of the things that go into this. Parking fits itself in funny little places and all of that. So, parking is, I mean, I think UCLA is there you can get, you can get your master's in parking. You can get, there's some really, there's a professor at UCLA that is a parking guru. I've read some of his books. There's Parking Today is a monthly magazine. The parking is a big deal in land use and in general city management and operations. And again, it's one that always has some wrestling match trade-offs. And I think one thing is this is a state mandate for one. We have to have this adopted by the end of the calendar year for two. And it's a really slow, it's as development applications come, it shows itself. And it has market pressures on it as well. It's interesting. It's a crystal ball kind of thing at this point about, how quickly it may or may not become problematic.
I think we have one more and that is that for the maximums, there are some uses that are exempt from that, particularly eating and drinking establishments, which restaurants are a pretty common use for the Coburg downtown area. Typically also higher need for parking. I think customers, when they go out to eat, aren't often trying to travel a very super far distance by foot. So there are just a very limited number of uses that are exempt from that. And also, I do think it will not affect the existing pattern of things immediately.
We don't have the Matt Knight Arena problem at this point.
No. And we have struggled with right-of-way issues as we address the alleyways. And again, it kind of comes back until you need access or until you need to do something there. That's kind of when we'll address it. And it's just kind of the way it is. I do wonder about if community will have questions on the changes to traditional residential district. But again, it's not existing
Right.
structures, it's new structures.
Right.
So I just throw that out there just because I know there will be conversation, but
In many communities, what this opens up is, and I think it might have been solved with a different set of legislation for accessory units, but many cities had parking minimums for accessory residential units, which basically they sounded, you had that opportunity in your code, but functionally on the ground, you had to provide off-street parking for an accessory residential, unit, not necessarily in this community, but in others. And that meant that you didn't actually get them built because people couldn't show that they had that off-street parking in an infill kind of project. I think what this does is it really does help residential infill opportunities that might otherwise be stuck trying to wrestle with how do I show parking? And I'm not as familiar with our code and history there, but
Also very common with multifamily development. And so in larger cities, oftentimes it's not needed to have 2 spots per bedroom or however those calculations were met, especially when it's located near a public transit center. And so that's kind of how these rules, the metro component of these rules kind of reflects back.
well, we should all just drive smart cars or scooters. Because that would alleviate a lot of the issues.
Well, I'm way ahead of you.
Yes, you are, and I was thinking of you.
yeah, and this does get to a lot of parking gets involved with affordable housing, workforce housing. How is that possibly able to pencil? And a lot of penciling is you can use more of the land for developable buildings rather than surface parking or structured parking when you really get into metro areas. Those are really expensive. So the amount of parking that is mandated in a code really impacts that project's viability. And so when you're, from a statewide perspective, if you're trying to have housing numbers, housing production that is way behind, parking is a potentially, in many, many cases, a big inhibitor to accomplishing units in general, but especially workforce and affordable units. So it is a component that does offer an option to make something pencil that otherwise would just sit and not develop. So there's always those trade-offs of do you want to have something that's from a marketplace perspective look punitive to what you're actually trying to also get, and that's a hard crystal ball to work with.
But it's got a long tail. I think
Yeah.
that's really what we have to remember. This is yes, we have to change the ordinances, the zoning requirements by the end of this year, but it will be a long time in the implementation based on new development.
And it's not a major departure from what we have.
No, it really
There's
isn't, as
other
I,
communities where it's a much
yeah,
bigger change.
as I looked through it, it really isn't. They aren't huge changes. So good job. And good job, Kathy, you were on that committee that worked hard and looking at some of the,
Yeah, we've been able to do some good land use planning,
yeah.
just some little bits and pieces of it, so that's good. Yeah, I might just chime in that, these kind of rules, I think this is a good time to put these state rules forward, in my opinion, because, we are really facing a building crisis with housing, and this is and the cost of development is very high right now. So I think opening up some more making land available for actually buildings instead of, asphalt is a good move right now. In general, I think.
Any other questions, comments? Nice to have a bit of a more informal session. If not, I will adjourn us at 7:23. Thank you all for spending your summer/fall evening here.